Major theme of his speech was that there is this unholy alliance of big business and big government, and they're working together to screw over the American people. And, like, damned if anyone can argue that that's not true. That's just so obviously the case, you know? And
Joe Rogan recently had Dave Smith on his podcast. While on the podcast, they were speaking about Robert Kennedy Jr. announcing his presidential candidacy. Robert Kennedy Jr. is an American environmental attorney, activist, and author. He is the son of Robert F. Kennedy, a former U.S. Attorney General and presidential candidate, and the nephew of former President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy has worked extensively on environmental issues, particularly related to water quality and pollution, and has served as chief prosecuting attorney for the Hudson Riverkeeper Organization, which works to protect the Hudson River and its watershed. He is also the founder and chairman of the Waterkeeper Alliance, an international organization that advocates for clean water and sustainable water management practices. In addition to his work as an environmental activist and attorney, Kennedy has authored several books, including Crimes Against Nature and Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak, which examine environmental and public health issues. He has also been involved in political activism, advocating for causes such as civil rights, criminal justice reform, and voting rights. Robert Kennedy Jr. has been vocal about his concerns regarding the safety of vaccines, particularly with regard to the use of certain additives and preservatives in vaccines, such as Thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative that has been used in some vaccines in the past. He has argued that the use of Thimerosal and other additives in vaccines may pose a risk to human health, particularly in young children who are still developing. Long before COVID, Kennedy was skeptical about the use of vaccines. Now that COVID is over and we can now reflect on the 2 years that the government forced us to be locked down, many are looking at Robert Kennedy as someone who may not have been completely wrong in his analysis.
I guess they're actually doing this.
Well, the fascinating thing is they will not allow, for the primaries, they're not going to allow debates.
Oh, they don't want to let RFK on a stage with Biden.
Yeah.
RFK will rip that old man up.
And then imagine if his voice was good.
It's really a shame.
It is a shame.
It's really the job is really a speaking tour.
Yeah.
And it's a real issue that he has issues speaking, but
he did have surgery recently, and it's better than it was before.
Is it better?
Yeah.
But he's an interesting guy in a lot of ways. And I know people will say because he was a vaccine skeptic way before the COVID vaccine. He's been a skeptic of vaccines in general. And a lot of people say that's like, oh, this is a conspiracy theory or it's too far. But, that argument after COVID is really much weaker than it used to be. Because people are actually like, yeah, I'm listening now.
Yes.
Now I'm actually kind of listening to that guy.
It seems like there's a playbook, and you guys have been.
It is easy to agree with what Dave is saying when he speaks about the relationship between big business and the government forming an alliance to make themselves much more powerful and much more wealthy. This is all done at the expense of the regular citizens of the world, who work 9-to-5 jobs and keep the economy stable. This was particularly evident in Canada. During the pandemic, Justin Trudeau implemented a strict lockdown on all Canadians. Getting caught hanging out with your friends would result in a stiff fine. Justin Trudeau was the one making the rules, however, and because of this, he was allowed to travel out of country at will and do whatever he pleased. While Canadians were on lockdown and stripped from their rights and freedoms for years, the cost of living continued to increase, which indirectly resulted in more crime and homelessness within the country. As of right now, Canada is one of the most unaffordable countries in the world, with a crime rate and homeless rate that is breaking record numbers. This is all because of the Canadian government forming an alliance with big corporation with a sole focus to steal money from regular people.
Been following this playbook forever.
Yes, and I got his speech, his announcement speech last week. He spoke for over an hour, and I mean, it was really fantastic. I don't agree with everything the guy says, but the major theme of his speech was that there is this unholy alliance of big business and big government, and they're working together to screw over the American people. And, damned if anyone can argue that that's not true.
No one
that's
can
just
argue
so obviously the case, you know. And he went through this whole thing. He was really great on the stuff on the war in Ukraine and being skeptical about like what the hell are we doing here. Really great on the COVID stuff, and he's a Kennedy, and he's not just like one of these like, you know, like peripheral Kennedys, like I married a third cousin type Kennedy. Like he's Bobby Kennedy's kid.
Yeah.
There's something powerful about that, even still, I think.
And it's amazing that we've come so far. We're so far.
The COVID-19 pandemic had a significant impact on the global economy, with some corporations experiencing a boost in profits while others struggled. The exact level of corporate wealth accumulation during the pandemic varies depending on the industry, country, and individual company in question, but here are some general trends. Tech companies. Many large tech companies saw significant increases in their stock prices during the pandemic as more people relied on technology for remote work, entertainment, and communication. For example, Amazon's net sales increased by 38% in the first quarter of 2021 compared to the same period in 2020, while Facebook's revenue increased by 48% over the same period. Pharmaceutical companies. As the COVID-19 vaccines were developed and distributed, some pharmaceutical companies saw increased profits. For example, Pfizer reported revenue of $3.5 billion from its COVID-19 vaccine in the first quarter of 2021. Retail and delivery companies. With many people staying at home and shopping online, companies such as Walmart and Target experienced increased profits, while delivery companies such as UPS and FedEx also saw a boost in business. However, it's important to note that many smaller businesses, especially those in industries such as hospitality and tourism, struggled during the pandemic due to reduced demand and government-mandated shutdowns. Additionally, some corporations faced backlash for their treatment of workers during the pandemic, such as unsafe working conditions or layoffs. The pandemic's economic impact was complex and varied, with some corporations profiting while others suffered losses.
We're so far gone that they're not grasping that.
Yeah.
They're not latching onto that. Like, you want a Democratic president, like he could be the guy. But the thing is, they don't want that. They want someone who adheres to the narrative 100% completely, doesn't get off track, is in cahoots with big business and big tech and everything else.
Well, it's just that like the narrative is part of it, but the narrative serves the system, you know? So the problem is that he's kind of outside the system, at least to some degree. At least he seems like he is. I don't know. But there's also something to, you know, look, I don't know exactly. In fact, I haven't heard him address it. I'm sure he has. But I don't know exactly where he is on his uncle and his father's, you know, assassinations. But I know that his dad was completely convinced that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy that they weren't telling us about. He did not buy at all into the like Lee Harvey Oswald lone, you know, wolf thing. So it's got to also be, you're a different type of outsider to the system if you believe the CIA killed your uncle.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different than just
and maybe
your dad. Yeah, that's a little bit different than just like, you know.
Robert Kennedy Jr. has much different intentions when it comes to becoming the next president. Many are aware that the United States government is just a machine, and the president is only the talking head of that machine. This is why they did not like it when someone as outspoken as Donald Trump became president. They were unable to control what he said, and they were not able to control the narrative. For Robert Kennedy, he is running to defeat the system that took many members of his family from him.